All right, welcome back to Steeler Thoughts and Chief Feelings, episode 25 now. I am Chris. I'm the philosophy professor and Steelers fan in the group here.
And I'm Ajay. I'm the psychiatrist and the Chiefs fan in the group here. Thanks so much to all of you that have been either listening to the podcast on whatever app you download podcasts on or following us along on YouTube here. Also, those of you that have been following us on social media at STCF715 on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Particularly those of you who have been watching the Chiefs-Saints film review from Week 5. We got a lot of engagement on that, so I really appreciate all of you that followed along. I have a pretty quick comment of the week from our social media. This comes from YouTube. It's from the Chiefs-Saints game, actually. Juju Smith-Schuster ran a route where he kind of just went and sat in the hole of a cover two in the hole shot along the sideline. And he kind of released late and just kind of flowed over there. It really didn't look to me like it was a route at all. And I actually felt really validated because I went back and watched the Peyton and Eli of the game because I watched the regular broadcast. And Eli Manning verbatim was like, that wasn't a route. Like, he didn't run a route. And I was like, oh, my God. But anyway, someone on YouTube didn't agree with me. So basically, I posted a short of that saying that, Juju, it doesn't look like he really ran a route. He just kind of settled in the hole. And the reply was from Daniel Gerard, who said, it's literally called an option route, ... So that's our comment of the week.
Well, Eli Manning disagrees, Daniel. And you heard it first, maybe, from Ajay. So there, you can hear great stuff on our channel. But I mean, in some sense, I guess it was an option route in a very loose sense.
Like every option in the world.
Yeah, right. I don't think that's how you typically think of an option route. But, okay. Cool, but yes, I agree. Thank you for all the engagement, and it's really awesome to see that video getting so many views and so much traction. So exciting for us, and hopefully for you all watching it. We have some games to talk about this week, but I think before we get there, we have some big news just from today. Not the Steelers. I wish it was the Steelers. The Chiefs are acquiring Deandre Hopkins from the Titans, and I guess I'll turn it over to Ajay to. I don't know if there are more details about the trade yet. I know that it's, I think, official, or at least it's been reported in enough places that you would be shocked if it weren't happening. But do we know anything more about the actual compensation?
So my understanding is that it's a 5th round pick that's like a conditional 4th rounder dependent on playing time. That's what I've heard. I don't know that that's been confirmed, but that's what I've been hearing. Okay,
that's palatable, right? We can live with that, right? I would have given up that for DeAndre Hopkins. What's your reaction to this? I think we had talked about moves the Chiefs might make at wide receiver, and this seems maybe a step up. I mean, again, he's not in his prime anymore, but he's still a very, very capable receiver. So I imagine this must be exciting.
Yeah, it's not a step up with like compensation wise. Like, I was pretty adamant that I didn't think the Chiefs were going to give up much, so they were going to. I honestly am a little surprised that DeAndre Hopkins was available for this much. Actually, Tom Pelissero has given the exact terms. Looks like the Chiefs are sending a 5th round pick that can become a 4th round pick if Kansas City reaches the Super Bowl and Hopkins plays 60% of his snaps as a Chief. So it would be very nice for that to become a 4th round pick. Wouldn't mind that at all.
Right, you would take that deal.
And it looks like the Titans are going to pay DeAndre Hopkins $2.5 million of his salary. So it'll be interesting to see what the cap hit for the Chiefs is going to be pretty low. So the two things that we were saying about what the Chiefs would do at wide receiver was they weren't going to take on big money, and they were not going to give up huge compensation. So this kind of tracks with that. I think the surprising part is that we got someone as capable of DeAndre Hopkins for that kind of limited compensation. He's on the last year of his deal, and it looks like the Chiefs are probably going to be, somewhere in the low single digits as far as cap hit, like maybe $3-4 million. So I think it's just nice that they were able to get, that kind of receiver at that rate. Now, he's 32. I think he fits really well. So normally Mahomes in the past has done really well at guys that can separate, and DeAndre Hopkins isn't much of a separator, but he does beat man coverage in very similar ways to Juju. So I think they're kind of looking at him like that kind of underneath the guy who'll take advantage with Kelsey and hopefully Juju if he stays healthy, of Xavier Worthy kind of taking the top off the defense. So I do think he'll fit really well, and he can slide in as what I'm hoping for him to be what Juju Smith-Schuster was to us in 2022. Like a guy who can be reliable, chain mover, 60 yards a game kind of guy. Like that would be great.
Yeah. That's the kind of, even that kind of production would be fantastic for you all, right? But it does feel like he has the potential to be more than that. And maybe that's just my ignorant perspective or my impression of him as when he was, in his prime and such a dominant receiver. But, I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that he's more dominant than you're hoping for, even at this point. But maybe again, that's just me.
That would be great. Last year in Tennessee, I'm looking it up now, he had 1,057 yards and 7 touchdowns. I would be absolutely thrilled with that. I would be happy with his year before production in Arizona. He had 717 yards and 3 touchdowns. For us, I think Juju, his year with us, he was in the 900 range with yards, and he had 3 touchdowns. More than enough. As long as he's somebody that's reliable, will beat press coverage, which it looks like from people that have been reviewing his Titans film, even from this year, it looks like he's still beating press coverage. If he can beat press coverage and he knows where to sit in his zone, whatever. That is a home run trade then.
At this point in his career, he must know where to sit in the zone. So, if he's gotten this far without that, then something's wrong. But yeah, so I think you got to steal there, and that's going to be exciting to see what comes of it. Do you think he'll start this next week, or how long do you think it'll take to work him in?
That's a good question. Andy Reid does tend to slow play people in, but we've already ruled Juju out this week. So I think Hopkins is going to play. The question is just how many snaps, what kind of role, what they'll, but we just don't have the horses. Xavier Worthy has been good for a rookie in our system, but he's not someone that we can just feed, except in things like reverses or screen passes and deep shots. Juju's out. Justin Watson is a good receiver in his limited role. He basically runs corner patterns and runs clear out routes. Sky Moore is, I feel bad because Sky Moore is that person that you really want to succeed and know is not going to succeed. It's very sad. He had a catch that he dropped in the Niners game, and it looked like he caught it, and they came up to the line, and then they ended up reviewing it and overturning it, and the whole response was well, of course Sky Moore dropped it. Why did we ever think he caught it? And I feel bad. I don't want to pile on the guy, but I don't know what it is. He just looked a lot better in college, and honestly, up through week 2 or 3 of last year, he had a good week 2 against the Jaguars last year, and it was maybe this guy can figure it out, but yeah.
It's that kind of, I know exactly the kind of player you're talking about, though. It's one that you would love for them to succeed. They really want to succeed. They're trying hard, and you just don't see it happening. This is, I think, if I'm being honest, where I was with Kenny Pickett for those 2 years that we had to deal with him. I kept trying to talk myself into thinking, if Tomlin believes in him, I can believe in him. But it's hard when you watch him, right?
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Speaking of Kenny Pickett, do you think last year when Tomlin said Kenny effing Pickett, that clip?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that's probably the last time anyone's ever going to say that to him in his career?
At least with enthusiasm, yes. Maybe with anger, it won't be the last time. But yeah, I think sadly, yes. I don't even
Yeah,
know. Is he still on the Eagles at this point? He was on the Eagles, and then there was talk. I don't even know what's happened to him. He's just dropped off the map. But
yeah,
I'd
that's
be curious to
too
follow up.
bad. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
Sky Moore is the guy who like you feel bad making fun. Like I don't want to make fun of him. Like I feel like I everything about him seems exceptionally likable, except that for whatever reason he cannot do anything right on the football field. And that wasn't always the case. Like as a rookie, he had a lot of mistakes, but he had positive flashes. And then early in his second year, he had positive flashes, and then it all just went downhill. I don't know.
is it one of those cases where like sometimes you have players that it looks like, I mean, this doesn't happen just in football, but like someone gets too much into their own head, so they're like constantly second guessing themselves because they've made certain mistakes in the past that were very crucial, and so now they're, it's just based on their history. They now have this sort of extra delay before they make a move or something like that because they're thinking like, is that the right move? And it's too late by the time they decide. I mean, would you chalk it up to something like that, or is it different?
That's my best guess, honestly. I think because the only part of the skill set that he doesn't seem to have is that, NFL defensive backs throughout the route are way more physical than they are in college. And it seems like he has trouble adjusting to that. Like his timing can be thrown off by a defensive back being physical way too easily. But that shouldn't affect you like in zone, right? At least not always, depending on what they're running. But with Sky Moore, it just seems like that's a constant. But everything else, like I do think, and I think that what really started was he was our punt returner to start. And in the first couple weeks of his rookie year, he muffed a couple punts. And I don't think he's had any confidence since then. He's had blips, like they pulled him off of the punt return. And he played better throughout the end of his rookie season. He caught some, decent passes. Then they had him return a punt in the AFC title game against the Bengals, and he had a big punt return right before everyone remembers the Mahomes late hit out of bounds play, but the whole reason we were close to field goal range is Sky Moore had a long punt return. And then the next year he came in like week 2 against the Jaguars, he had like 70 yards and a touchdown or something. It was like, oh, he looks like a receiver. And I think that's like the last positive memory I have of Sky Moore. Like it just, but I agree with you. It seems like there's a lot. He's one of those people that you can see on his face that he's stressed out. He looks stressed out all the time. It's too bad.
He doesn't look relaxed out. I mean, a lot of people, you don't usually look too relaxed out there. Although, I mean, I'm just free associating almost at this point, but there were a couple of plays from Lamar Jackson on Monday where he did just look super relaxed. He kind of just like, I'm going to throw it to the right. Nah, I'll just like casually look over there and throw it deep down. I mean, like he does play the game differently than a lot of people, but anyway.
Well,
most people don't look that relaxed.
Yeah, it must be so comforting though to be back in the pocket and know that like in 95% of scenarios, you are athletic enough to get yourself out of it. So it's like, okay, I'm not really that worried about if someone's coming, because if they are coming, I'll probably get out of it. Like, it's fine.
Yeah, I'll see them in time and I can move faster than them, so it's not too big of a deal. Maybe that's where the calmness comes from. Yeah. I did want to ask also before we get into more details about the Chiefs game this week, or last week, what your current take is or reaction is to Kareem Hunt's impact so far, right? I mean, it was an unexpected move a couple of weeks ago, and it seems like he's been very good so far. Do you have any more insight than he's been very good so far? Then that's about where I am.
Well, I really think the thing with him is that, and I didn't realize it until we saw him back, he has the ability to move in small areas, like kind of slither through cracks in the line in a way that no running back on our team has since we cut him in 2018. And you combine that with the fact that I think he has better vision than any of the running backs that have come after him. He just has this uncanny... I remember, and I'm not comparing him to these running backs, but it's the qualities that you would see in a Priest Holmes or a Jamal Charles, where like they kind of run into the line and somehow they're on the other side of the line, and you're like, how did that happen? Like, where did they even get through? Like, Clyde never did that. Like Pacheco is always going at 100 miles an hour, so I think it's very hard for him to be like a vision back. You know, he's always like, let's go. But yeah, Kareem Hunt does that in a way that very few running backs I've seen can do, and it's very useful because it's not like it's the NFL. You're not going to like blow open massive holes all the time, and you can really utilize somebody like Kareem Hunt that is able to take advantage of what's there.
Yeah, so he's like one of those backs where, it doesn't look like you're going to get that many yards. Maybe you'll get 2 yards or 3 yards from the way this is blocked, but he'll end up getting like 5 or 6 because he can slither through and pivot forward as he's being tackled or something like that, right?
Right, the body control, and he does have great contact balance too. It's like if he gets like bumped on his way through the hole, he's not going down. And I think that part of his game is not as good as it was in 2017, 2018. I think he was a little more agile. He had a little better contact balance, and he had a better like top end speed. So like those things are different, but it doesn't really matter because he's like our interior offensive line is effective enough that someone who can really take advantage of what's there will be very productive.
Yeah, that's awesome. Quite a signing mid-season that was sort of forced on you by necessity, but looks like it's really going to pay dividends. So do you want to maybe get into the Chiefs and 49ers game from this past week? I mean, that was some really fun moments in there. Some awesome Mahomes plays. So yeah, and basically just unless there's anything more you want to say about Kareem Hunt, I'd be happy to get in and get your thoughts on the game this past week.
Yeah, I think it was a better offensive performance than it felt like. I think reflecting on the game, rewatching the game, it felt like a very frustrating offensive performance in real time because we were dominating, and especially the defense was dominating throughout the early part of that game, and it felt like we weren't taking advantage of it. And Mahomes threw 2 more picks, but they both, in my opinion, were just bad luck picks. Like, they had a tip ball by a defensive tackle that popped straight up in the air, and he caught. I will say the Chiefs are one of the best defenses, at least they have been over the last couple of years, at batting down balls at the line. And it seems like the ball never falls to a defender. And I know this is anecdotally, like you feel like whatever, the bad things always happen to you. But like when I saw the defensive tackle tip that ball, it goes straight up in the air and right back to him. I was like, what? How, why? Like, why is that always like when Chris Jones knocks a ball down, like Nick Bolton knocked one down very soon after, I think, or not soon after, it was before, I think. It was somewhere around the same time in the game, and the ball just like harmlessly fluttered 5 yards, and no one was around. Like,
or it gets batted back to Mariota, who then runs it in for a touchdown.
Yeah, yeah, that happens too. Yeah, like what? I don't know,
yeah.
But so that pick,
yeah.
And then on his other pick, Xavier Worthy fell down, so it ended up being a pretty easy pick for the defender.
Yeah,
I thought it was interesting.
Those is like obviously on Mahomes, right?
Yeah. I will say, again, to digress, like that was one time where I felt like Tom Brady's analysis was actually interesting after that pick, because he started talking about how, like, when you're a quarterback and you have a young receiver, when things like that happen, it really affects your trust. Like, he was saying that you throw that ball when he's making his break, and if you can't trust that he's going to be there, that kind of is a little bit of a setback in the rapport you're building and the relationship you're building with the receiver. So I thought that was an interesting perspective from him.
Yeah, be curious to see if that actually does seem like it manifests any further on the field. But certainly, yeah, you imagine he's going to think about that. So okay, yeah. I mean, people have made a lot about the fact that Mahomes has more interceptions than touchdowns on the year, but it does feel like a lot of them have been kind of really not his fault. How many of them have been batted or tipped or because a receiver fell over? A good percentage, I would say.
Yeah, he did have that stretch where, like against Atlanta, he had a couple just inaccurate ones. I feel like the one he threw to what's the name of that? Cameron Taylor Britt, the Bengals corner that made the awesome one-handed interception. Like that was an
Yeah.
underthrown ball. So I do think Mahomes has been a little off, but he's the one of the few players that like really makes me believe in like clutchness. If you notice, like Mahomes is always throwing picks like early in a game or when we're ahead. Like when it really gets down to like we need a drive, like he's not throwing an interception. I should knock on wood, but he does seem to be a little looser and trying things out more with the offense early in games. And then once it's like, okay, we need something to happen, suddenly he's protecting the ball.
Mhm. I, uh, that's a good point. And I would also just add that I think touchdown to interception ratio is overrated as a statistic. I mean, if the interceptions are sort of gratuitous or clumsy or whatnot, then there's something to worry about. But I think, you know, to focus on like how many completions do they have in this little chunk of the field or where the receiver ends up getting into this little chunk of the field as opposed to like what are their yards per attempt and their completion percentage and whatnot. I think those are typically better metrics to gauge a quarterback's performance by. And maybe I'm biased, but watching, Ben Roethlisberger never had amazing touchdown interception ratios. At least not in like the strata of like Roethlisberger or some of Mahomes' early or of of Aaron Rodgers or some of Mahomes' early years. But and in fact, I think his best season was one where he had like 21 and 15 touchdowns to interceptions or something in 2015. But yeah, I mean, uh, it's easy. It's like it's a quick step to look at and like come up with something that sounds like an educated judgment about a quarterback. But I think that a lot is not apparent there, right? And he could be having a great year, even if the touchdown interception ratio is not top of the league.
And I do think like in these sports in particular which honestly, I don't know, I can't think of a sport that doesn't qualify as this, but where the margins are so thin, like it really matters what you do in the very important moments. I remember, being a tennis fan, it's something like what determines what wins a match is something like 5% of the points, 3% of the points. It's just like these small crucial moments. How do you play in those moments?
Isn't
And
there
I
some
think,
stat about Federer, like the percentage of points he's won? It's like slightly higher than 50% or something. I mean, something ridiculous,
yeah,
like very surprising, right?
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's won like 80 some odd percent of his matches, but only like just over 50% of his points. And it's because like it's just those key points. And it's the same thing in football. It's like when you're throwing a pick up 10-0 in the second quarter, it's just a different ball game than when you're throwing a pick down by 3 with 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Like it just matters a lot more at the end of the game or in key moments.
yeah, yeah. All right, so people that are worried about Mahomes need to look more closely at the plays. I guess obviously there are some plays to be concerned about, but would you still say that you're not overall concerned with his play this year?
No, I mean, I'd love it to be a little sharper, but I also I think we saw in the playoffs last year that when things matter, he and Andy Reid are able to kind of really focus in on what works. And what I think happens at the beginning of these kind of seasons where we don't have a juggernaut group of players is that they're trying a lot of things to kind of determine what things they eventually need to focus in on. And so Andy Reid has always told Mahomes, like, try things, try what you can do, see where the limit is. And I think that's part of what happens early in seasons. And if you can do that while you're still winning, I think that's great. I don't know that this is going to be a year where he throws for 4,500 yards and 40 touchdowns, but I also think that he's aware that that's not what is required of him for us to win a Super Bowl. And I think that's what he's focused in on is how can I, save the plays that I know we can run really well for the moments when we really need them. And let's kind of work through the Rolodex of other plays during the rest of the game to see where we can get advantages later in the season.
Yeah, that's cool. It's like the old what do they call it? Explore and exploit strategy, where you're basically experimenting to see what works when it doesn't matter as much, and then you know better what you can use later when it does matter. So, yeah, prudent strategy. um, Good. Well, so in more detail about this game, anything that you want? I mean, I think we should at least mention some of his amazing runs in this game. He had that really long one to get them down in the red zone, and that other one where he trucked the defender. Anything you want to say about those? I mean, those are going to be iconic for a while now, I think.
Yeah, I think they kind of came apart. So this game kind of went in two bits. Like the Chiefs dominated early on, and then there was a period in the middle where offensively we sputtered a little bit. We had 3 straight drives where I think it was like interception, punt, punt, or punt, interception, punt. And the 49ers finally put an offensive drive together, and it seemed like there was a tipping point in the game. And that's where it seems like Mahomes really takes charge, and he had that run down the sideline. One thing I want to say about that run is I think the commentary, the commentary about the run in general NFL discourse has been that the NFL protects quarterbacks so much that they don't want to hit a quarterback who's going out of bounds, so Mahomes can kind of fake going out of bounds. They're comparing it to the Kenny Pickett slide in college.
Yeah.
And that's not really a compelling argument to me, because there actually is not a difference between any quarterback. The quarterback doesn't get special protections when they're running 20 yards downfield by the sideline. Like, now psychologically, maybe officials are more likely to throw a flag for a quarterback but if this strategy were to work so well, then you would imagine any player running with the ball would use it, because anyone who's out of bounds that gets hit is going to draw a flag. So I don't really think that's a great strategy. I mean, we'd have more evidence that people are using this strategy if that actually were something that would work. And I don't think that's what happened in that situation. Like, Kareem Hunt had a good block on the sideline, and Mahomes he kind of slow played a defender, got around, used the block, and went down the sideline. I don't really think he did much of like faking ducking out of bounds at all, except putting on a little bit of a juke to help utilize a block. So I don't know.
So strange to talk about a quarterback making a juke on the sideline, but yeah, I mean, like, to see that happen, that is what he did, right?
And also, like, if you're a doofus that's going to respond to like a fake pass 5 yards down the field, like, I don't know what to tell you. And I'm not even meaning to like disparage because I'm sure as a defender, like, you're not that aware of where the line of scrimmage is, and you're just running after him, and someone brings their eyes and fakes a pass, like, it probably instinctively gets you to slow down a bit, and he's athletic enough that that's all that matters.
Or being in that situation, like, if he's throwing it, maybe he can throw it, right? Like, so maybe that makes me think he can throw it. Right? It's a good move, right? You do it wherever you are in the field. You'll probably give them a half-second hesitation or something. But
and that's all you need. Like, that's
right, exactly.
Unfortunately for defenders, like, Mahomes is agile enough that you slow down for a second, and that's all you need.
Surprisingly agile. I keep thinking that, but again, maybe I'm used to less agile quarterbacks. But
yeah, I mean, he's very deceptive. I remember Robert Saleh telling the 49ers in the first time they played in the Super Bowl, he was like, "Don't be deceived by the way he like duck walks around between plays. Like, this guy can run. Like, be ready for it."
Yeah, you wonder almost like whether the almost like a waddle between plays. Like, he does have that kind of. He does not look super athletic, and then he does when it matters. And maybe that's again a kind of like get in their heads or something, right? Like, make them think I'm not as athletic as I am. I mean, Terry Bradshaw used to talk about like. You play things up a bit, right? Like if you just took a hit, you you motivate your guys, you like act like it really hurts, even if it doesn't. That kind of thing, just to like, it's a kind of gamesmanship, and maybe that's what Mahomes is doing there. But I don't know.
He also says one of the things he tries to do a lot is to compliment defensive linemen a lot. He's like, I don't want them to be mad at me. He's like, they're going to try to hit me even harder. So he's like, I always tell them when they hit me, I was like, good hit, good rush. That was great. Great job.
Yeah, I think that would be my strategy too. I would just be very obsequious and very fawning about all the players that are trying to beat me, right? So they don't feel as angry and motivated to beat me. Yeah. And then what about the other run, the one where he had that iconic trucking.
That was incredible, particularly if like those like who kind of watched the game in detail, or like Malik Mustafa like hit a couple guys. I want to think he nailed Xavier Worthy once, and he definitely laid a big hit on somebody else. I can't remember. And he hurt Xavier Worthy. Like Xavier Worthy was out for a couple plays, like recovering from that hit. So he was definitely like the enforcer of the game. So it was just a perfect like poetic justice that Mahomes laid him out at the goal line. And to his credit, Malik Mustafa made fun of himself on Twitter afterward. Like he took it like a champ. Like that was actually really cool to see.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's good that people don't take themselves that seriously. But well, we have to take a break in just a second here. But anything? I mean, we should probably come back and talk a bit more about the overall trajectory of the game. But anything more we want to hit on before we break?
No, I will just have some things to say about the defense because I feel like the defense was ultimately the reason we won this game. They really played well. Well, that and clutch Mahomes. You can't discount that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll be right back and talk more about this Chiefs-49ers game. And we're back with more on the Chiefs and 49ers game. So you were mentioning you want to talk a bit about the defense. I mean, it did feel like they had a couple really crucial, like third and short, maybe fourth and short stops in this game that were really impressive. But obviously, there's more that they did that was pretty impressive. So yeah, you want to talk about that?
Well, I think first of all, we talked about it last week that there was a possibility that the Chiefs would just really shut down this run game and then make it tough for them to do anything offensively. And I think that's exactly what happened from the onset. Like the Chiefs were all over the run to start the game. I think their overall numbers ended up not looking as good because I want to say in the third quarter, but it's possible in the fourth quarter, they had one drive where they ran the ball fairly successfully. But in general, the Chiefs really made it hard. It was actually one piece of Tom Brady's analysis at halftime that I thought was awfully disappointing. He was like, well, the Niners need to run the ball. They don't have enough rushing attempts. And it's like, well, yeah, they don't have enough rushing attempts because they can't move the ball. Like they were really struggling running the ball. They ended up the day not looking that bad. They had 24 rushes for 101 yards. But if my memory serves me correctly, like a big chunk, I might even say like 50 plus yards of those 101 were just on one drive. So I feel like the Chiefs defense was really exceptional. And then Brock Purdy also really struggled. Like he ended this game with a 13.4 QBR. So they, that both quarterbacks' ratings didn't look very good because Purdy had no touchdowns and 3 picks and Mahomes had no touchdowns and 2 picks. But Mahomes' QBR was 80.4 and Purdy's was 13.4. Like he really seemed to struggle. The Chiefs played a lot of man. And, of course, Purdy was without a couple receivers, and then he also lost Ayuk to a torn ACL in this game. So not that, there weren't some reasons for his struggles, but Purdy just didn't seem like he knew what was going on through some of this game.
Yeah, it didn't look like he was in a position to carry the team here, certainly. I mean, and I guess not many people, maybe outside of 49ers fans, probably would have thought he would be in a position to carry the team, especially with all those injuries. But yeah, I mean, he didn't look like he could do it by himself here.
And the other thing too is some of his picks were, so the first interception he threw was basically Justin Reed seemed to just exactly know what play was being called. Like he just keyed in and he knew where the throw was going and he went and picked it. The second one was by like an undrafted free agent, formerly practice squad corner, who got his first career pick, and it was just a miscommunication between Purdy and the receiver. Clearly, Purdy thought he was taking a corner route, like more up to the corner, and the receiver flattened it out, and so the cornerback was by himself ready to intercept the pass. And then the third one was a pick in the end zone, and I honestly don't know what Purdy was doing. He was throwing to someone in double coverage, and it was an bad throw. Like it was just a really poor throw there from Purdy. I can't even tell what he was looking at. Hopefully we'll look at that film tonight with the Chiefs Niners film review and maybe have a better idea, or just confirm my thoughts now that it was just a terrible throw. I don't know.
It could have just been one of those desperation things, right? Like it's someone's got to happen here, and there's no good option, so I'm going to force it somewhere. But I mean, I do that in Madden, or at least when I used to play Madden, I would do that all the time. So I understand it, even though it's not the kind of play you want from your starting quarterback in the NFL. Yeah. Uh, what else about the? I mean, I guess there's the Jalen Watson injury that's not great news, but I think have they already signed someone to replace him? I think he's out for the year, right?
Yeah, he broke his ankle. I don't remember seeing like a full timeline on it, but it seems unlikely that he will be back this season. It's too bad because, we had talked about how the Chiefs' second corner situation coming out of camp was a bit of a worry, and then Jalen Watson looked really bad in the preseason. And then he's played really well this year. Like, he kind of took the second corner job, and it was something like we were just getting to the point of being like, okay, we don't have to worry about our second corner. This is amazing. And then he breaks his ankle. So that's really rough.
Yeah.
It sounds like he's going to be out for the year, and like it's one of those situations that maybe in a deep playoff run he could come back, but it's going to be a little rough because the other corner that came in with him, Joshua Williams, has been kind of so Joshua Williams was the 4th round pick in 2022. Jalen Watson was the 7th round pick, and Jalen Watson has outplayed Joshua Williams every year since they were drafted. But the undrafted free agent, Najee Johnson, didn't play his rookie year, tore his ACL his sophomore year, and now is playing his 3rd year. And so it'll probably be him that has to step up here over Joshua Williams. But it is a little precarious. I don't know if the Chiefs are planning to make any kind of move here. The thing is, their safety room they feel really good about. So you wonder if they're just going to kind of lean heavily on their safeties. They already have a safety kind of playing slot corner in nickel situations. Shamari Connor does a lot of that. And maybe they're just going to trust Najee Johnson to be, because that would be like the one kind of weak link in the secondary. And the secondary has been awesome so far, much more so than the pass rush outside of Chris Jones. So, a step back from the secondary could be quite noticeable if that happens, because they've been kind of the foundation of the defense. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I feel like every week, though, the Chiefs have some new major injury that's like, what are we going to do about that? And they're fine. And they're still undefeated. So I'm sure they'll find a way to keep winning. What else from this game is worth, I mean, there's so much worth probably talking about, but anything else that you want to highlight?
Not much other than just, I think in hindsight, the offensive performance was a little bit better than it looked. I don't know that, this might be the second year in a row after Mahomes had a 5-touchdown game in every season of his career. Last year was the first year he did not, and I think we might be on that trajectory again. This just doesn't, I think it could have been that kind of year if everyone had stayed healthy. If we had Hollywood Brown and we had Rashee Rice, and who knows, maybe Hollywood Brown comes back in week 13 and now we have DeAndre Hopkins and suddenly this offense is like going crazy. I don't think it's going to be like last year. I think one thing we should touch on is after all the red zone complaints from last week, we went, I think, 4 or 5 in the red zone this week. The only time we didn't score in the red zone was the pick that was tipped by the lineman and intercepted. So, and that was the first red zone trip. So we went 4 of 4 after that. So I do think this offense is looking a little bit better than it looks. And if they can kind of combine what happened in the Saints game with what happened this week with the red zone, I think there's something there, and they'll be formidable enough. And the Chiefs defense just continues to roll. So if they can keep up that performance, I think it'll be a tough team to beat.
I do think it'll be very interesting to see what happens when Hopkins gets involved. And it might take, a couple of weeks for them to get on the same page. But it's also, he's an experienced receiver, and you could imagine it being the case that he comes in and has an immediate impact. And really boost the offense. So, you know, with all the change you all have had at receiver this year, it feels like, and this included, you know, it's not obvious that, at least from my, again, naive external perspective, that a 5 touchdown game is out of the picture. I feel like, who knows, right? Again, yeah, also if Hollywood Brown comes back and now you have Hopkins too, and he's really accustomed to the offense by that point, you know, could be really explosive. So who knows exactly how it's going to go. But with Mahomes, I feel like you can't, you know, no one should be surprised if he comes out next week or the week after and throws 5 touchdowns. Just that kind of player.
Oh, I have one other update that's not really related to the game, but I did a little digging on the posterior corner.
Oh yeah.
So, sorry, the posterior lateral corner, I should say. And what it really refers to is the kind of behind your knee in the lateral part. So it's quite literal. The posterior lateral corner. It's made up of your lateral collateral ligament and then a couple insertions of the muscles that make up your calf muscles. So it's like those tendons inserting up onto the bone. And this doesn't seem to be like a very technical, like only looking up the literature, only like orthopedic surgeons seem to use this. This isn't like a general anatomy term, which is why I, as a psychiatrist, don't know it. But yeah, that's so. When they talk about posterior lateral corner injury, it can be referring to an LCL injury or LCL plus the tendons of some of the insertions of those muscles over there. But that general term, how Andy Reid started spouting out terms like posterior lateral corner, I don't know. Maybe he like really, but it's not like a specific like anatomical term. Rather, I mean, it is, but not one used by like general medical practitioners. More, I think it's specific to people that are doing surgeries and evaluating specific muscles or tendons in that area.
So it's a particular kind of region where all those things are located, right? It's not like you could like take it out and say, "Here's your corner" or something. Right. Okay, gotcha. Right. Yeah, good to have that cleared up because we were wondering like what the heck. I don't think I've ever heard that expression before. I mean, it's not surprising given that I don't have a medical background, but yeah. Well,
you have a pre-medical background, don't you?
Yeah, but that has so little to do with probably what you like. I didn't learn body parts, at least not beyond like the basics you get in elementary school. Yeah, no, pre-med. What was it? It was like memorize a bunch of proteins in the cell and spit them back to me in 2 weeks. And so that's what I did a lot of. Right? I'm sure there's a lot of that. Memorize all this stuff anyway, but in med school, but maybe more macro-sized stuff. What else? Anything else about I mean, I don't want to shift to the Steelers before we talked about everything that deserves talking about with the Chiefs this week.
I think that's about it. It's just going to be how quickly can Hopkins get incorporated. I tend to feel like with the kind of newfound power running game that the offense will still be fine until the passing game gets more options. They're just effectively moving the ball effectively enough to create enough openings for Mahomes to be satisfactory, and that's all they need right now.
Yeah. Well, it's working, right? Not much to complain about, at least big picture one. You want to shift gears and talk about Steelers game?
Yeah, so I want to start with, instead of like actual narrative about like what happened in the game, the first thing that I wanted to ask you about is my perception. I felt like this was the first time in a long time that Mike Tomlin was having fun. Like, it seemed like he was like happy. We've seen a lot of intense, we've seen a lot of like motivated, but he seemed like he was like happy for the first time in a while. Do you feel like that's fair?
I think that's fair to say. I think I can't remember a couple of moments even on the broadcast, right? Like Aaron Rodgers caught us with 12 men on the field at one point. It was a 4th and 4. Yeah, and I mean, he's done that to us before, and I can't remember when it happened before whether Tomlin called a timeout that time as well. But they've had these like sort of sideline to field exchanges where it's like a nod or like a I know what you're up to here. And they had another one this time. Tomlin called a timeout before he could get the playoff, which would have given them a 5 yard penalty and or given been a 5 yard penalty on us, and they would have had an automatic first down. So that was an important moment. I think they were on maybe our 25 or around there, so down 2 scores in the fourth quarter. But that could have been. I don't know. It was a fun play. It was good to see. Yeah, Tomlin. I think he gets a lot of flack about some in-game decisions, but that was one of the better ones, and that was fun to watch him be on top of that and be enjoy it himself clearly. But yeah, I think also just he mentioned in the press in what was it, a post-game press conference that he had sort of gone solo on this decision to start Russell Wilson over Fields. I think that means probably that even a lot of people in the organization thought that Fields should keep starting. I don't know exactly. I mean, maybe Arthur Smith and Omar Khan and whatnot also thought so. But for it to have gone well, probably was part of him enjoying it, right? That he made the right decision there, even when everyone else thought the right decision was to start Fields. So, again, I guess you could debate whether that was the right decision, but it definitely was not a bad one. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, the other moment that I really enjoyed was I think it was at the very end of his press conference when he got a question about the decision, and he said something like, "Well, that's why I'm well compensated," and that was fantastic.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. I mean, he deserves to feel good about that. I think that's awesome.
Well, and as someone, I feel like I've been pretty vocal throughout the season on the podcast and on the film reviews about my belief in Justin Fields and my skepticism that Russell Wilson would provide anything above what Fields could provide. And I won't say that I've completely jumped ship on that take, but I will have to eat some crow because I thought that, for at least a game, Russell Wilson provided things that Fields wasn't providing. And we'll see if that continues, but yeah. I think I'm still stubbornly clinging. I'll say I'm like 75% eating crow and 25% like, well, let's just wait and see. I'm not 100% sure, but that even someone like me who is very on board with the Fields thing, my eyebrows were raised by that performance. Although it started out pretty rough, but
yeah, got it together. I was going to say, I mean, early on, you would not even been tasting any crow, right? Like there would be no crow on your plate. Is that literal? Like, or when it talks about eating crow, is it literal crow?
That's a great question. We'll have to look up the etymology of that phrase. I don't know.
I just took it to a level that it shouldn't have gone to. But yeah, early on, it did look pretty tenuous there. I mean, there were a couple. It's even just like a wide receiver screen pass that he bounced like 2 yards short and behind. I think maybe it was Calvin Austin or somebody. And then there was a clip of Tomlin also on the broadcast being like, "Oof, that's not good." But he did get going there, and we could talk about like exactly how well he got going. I think maybe two things to highlight about that, right? So. He definitely started feeling it a bit better at some point, right there. There was a rollout there where there was an unblocked defender, like right in his face as soon as he rolled out, and he did this nice kind of almost a sidearm throw to Freiermuth, who then took it in stride for like I think it ended up being 30 yards or something like that.
Great throw.
Yeah, that was fun to see. I think that might have been one of the early throws that seemed to be getting him into it. And I think his other big, he's better at play action than we have been so far this year. I think maybe it's just sort of I don't know exactly what to make of it, but he definitely seemed like he was better at play action. We had not been that good at play action so far this year, and that's really a big part of Arthur Smith's offense, at least traditionally. So that might have been another reason that Tomlin was thinking we need to get him in there, because he definitely does tend to thrive on play action that can line up with what Arthur Smith wants to do. But the other thing about Wilson, which I would say Fields hasn't done as much, is just give the playmakers chances to make plays, essentially, right? He just lobbed it up to Pickens a couple times, and they weren't always really great throws. They weren't always exactly where you would want the ball to be. But Pickens one-on-one, when you get that, why not take advantage of it? Because he wins so many, like such a high percentage of jump balls that it's going to pay off more than it's not. So I thought it seemed to me like Wilson had a better sense of what he could do and when he could, he doesn't have to place this ball perfectly. He can put it somewhere around Pickens if he's one-on-one, and chances are good that he'll make the catch. That was true on the touchdown. It was true on at least one of the deep bombs. Really, too. You were talking about a couple like unlucky bounces the Chiefs had. We had a couple of very lucky bounces in this one. I should emphasize, right? There was a deep one to Pickens along the right sideline that I can't remember who it bounced off first, but I think there were like three juggles essentially, and it bounced off Pickens and the defender in one order or the other, and then Pickens again juggled it as he was trying to avoid a tackle. So we got super lucky there, but Pickens just has hands like that, so that can happen. And then one of Beanie Bishop's picks was like right off the receiver, which, I mean, you and I were talking about that over text, and one could make the case that Bishop did more to influence that play, at least by having his hand very close to the ball as it was coming in and maybe distracting the receiver from it. But that was a good degree of luck as well, I would say, for that to bounce right to him. So, it was a really fun game to score 37 points. It's been a little while here. To score 30-plus points in back-to-back weeks, it's been a long while for us. But, yeah, overall, I would say that was probably realistically as well as you could have hoped that the Russell Wilson experiment would go in his first game back. Right? There was a little bit of rust at the beginning, but it did feel like he got into the feel of things, got into a rhythm, and made the kind of plays that you're kind of used to him making. Again, that's those. I don't know how many times Chris Collinsworth said moon balls on the broadcast, but he made a lot out of them, and they were what you expected out of Wilson. They were those deep, arcing moon shots or whatever, and then play action and a lot of plays on the run, rolling out of the pocket one way or the other. Yeah, he was the good version of Russell Wilson, I would say.
Yeah, and I think, I feel like this is going to be me like taking my initial prediction looking worse and steering it toward another prediction that I have that I feel like looks better. And that is that I have also been fairly dismissive of Sean Payton recently, kind of considering him. Like, I think of Sean Payton on the Broncos like I thought of John Gruden in his last stint with the Raiders. It's like he's a coach that's not like, he's done things. He's won a Super Bowl. He will have games where he outdoes. I mean, he outdid Andy Reid a couple times when he was a Raider that John Gruden did. But ultimately, like, I just don't think he's more than like a 9-8 kind of coach. And that's how I feel about Sean Payton. And I will say, if Tomlin's able to get Russell Wilson to play like this all year, I think that should be an indictment of Sean Payton over the last 2 years. Like, what was going on in Denver if Russell Wilson's still capable of this?
Yeah, I feel like there was I honestly don't. I mean, I don't have a lot of exposure to what happened with Wilson in Denver, but there was, I think, some hope for me that it was more Peyton's fault or not being invested in having Wilson work out than it was on Wilson. And again, who knows? But it would strengthen that theory, I guess, if Wilson does continue to play well for us this year and be the kind of quarterback, not as good, but the kind of quarterback that he used to be in Seattle when he was so dangerous and went to back-to-back Super Bowls. If we could get something close to that version of Russell Wilson or something approximating that version of Russell Wilson, that would be humongous for us, right? That would be amazing.
And I do, going back to Chris Collinsworth and his moonshots, I feel like Collinsworth is in this interesting place now where he simultaneously is like a fun broadcaster to watch and has some insightful comments, and he's very easy to make fun of. He kind of walks that line very nicely. But I did think that his discussion about ball trajectory was really compelling when he talked about the fact that Wilson's, higher arcing throw gives you a better angle for the ball to come down to the receiver without the defender having the ability to interfere with the throw. And I would add to that I feel like having the higher arcing throw allows for more inaccuracy because you don't have to be as precise. The defender or the receiver can run to the spot where the ball's going. And honestly, I think it's something that Mahomes could look into. I don't know if you saw him miss that bomb to Worthy in the Chiefs game. He had Worthy, and he somehow overthrew a guy that runs a 4.2 140. Mahomes just absolutely launched that ball, and if he had just put a little bit of a moonshot, that Worthy would have been able to run under it. But Mahomes throws it so much flatter, and you really have to be precise with that throw. And I think that's a tough thing for Fields, whereas Wilson does a much better job of just getting it up there and letting people run under it.
Yeah, it wasn't something that I thought much about before Collinsworth made a play of it on the broadcast, but it does ring true. I mean, a lot of Fields throw are more on a line, and you do have to be very precise with those throws. And part of what was impressive so far about him this year was that he was pretty precise with a lot of those deep throws, getting them on a line right to Pickens' hands, basically. But yeah, with Wilson, it's almost like he's like, I don't really need to be that precise. I'm just going to put it up there, and it's one-on-one, and Pickens will run in under it, and it'll be fine. Right? There were a couple times when it happened that way, and he had a similar throw to Freiermuth that was just, it looked, it was arcing, and it was a great catch. Pat Freiermuth had to reach out with one hand and make it, but again, I think these arcing throws are ones you can afford to be less accurate on, and also any Madden player should, this should actually make sense, right? Because at least when I played Madden, and it's been a little while, but it would always be, how you can either hold the button down to get a bullet pass or just tap it to get a moonshot, essentially. I would always be so tense in the middle of the play, I gotta get this off. I would end up mashing the button and holding it, so every pass would be like a bullet pass. And so what would happen when I was throwing it outside the numbers is my receiver would have beaten the corner, but I would bullet it, and the corner would just have this perfect trajectory to pick it off, right? And so this happened so many times, and if I had been relaxed enough to just tap the button as opposed to hold it down, I feel like I could have had some of this advantage that Russell Wilson seems to have, and that Chris Collinsworth was mentioning in the game. But anyway, it reminded me of my Madden days and my inability to just relax a little bit when I was pressing the receiver button.
Nowadays, I feel like the Madden has so much more control over things. It's very difficult to. I miss the old. Wait, what do you think is peak Madden? What would be your game? If you had to be I could play one Madden game, a desert island Madden game, which one would it be?
Well, I haven't played one extensively since 2015, so take this with a grain of salt. But I feel like around maybe 2004 or 5, I really enjoyed those ones. Those ones were super fun, and maybe that's just the most time I spent with it, but I do think I spent more time with it then because it was more fun for me then. So yeah, I would say that. What about you?
Mine was 2004. The one with Vic on the cover. To me, that was peak Madden. They never reached that height again. I feel like
that was pre-Vision Cone, right?
Pre-Vision.
Yeah. I remember when that came in, but that was so annoying.
I think that was 06.
Okay. I appreciate the idea, but having to it's just one. I don't know.
Too many variables. Yeah.
Yeah.
And too many things to process. My brain couldn't handle all of. Yeah, but the Madden 2004 was the gameplay was nice. The player movement was nice. So I've dabbled in Madden since, I had, I definitely played 11 and 12 a lot. And then I took a break until the 17, 18 range. And then I went back, I got 23. So I've been jumped around, and I just never have appreciated the gameplay back in those days. I feel that 2002 to 2005, 2006 range, the gameplay was good. The passing game worked. The run game worked. It all just felt like it worked smoothly.
Mm-hmm. How's 2023? Is it substantially different?
I honestly am not a huge fan. it's fun to like play with Mahomes and all, and then I've gotten tired. I actually tried to break it out like a week ago, and I played like one game, and I was like, all right, that's enough. I actually like played Chiefs-49ers before the game. I played like Chiefs at San Francisco, and
Yeah.
it's fun, but it's just not. I don't know. It's a little too clunky. The player movement's a little clunky. The plays don't seem to work like intuitively. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like there's as much like attention to detail as there is even in like the basketball games. Like the basketball games, everything seems to make sense. It like flows like you'd expect people to move, and the football games just haven't really caught up to that.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be nice if they invested more in that, but I guess they don't have much need to, right? They can keep
Still
they keep selling
exclusive
it.
rights. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, next week we'll be sponsored by EA Sports. um, yeah. Well, okay. I did also want to mention that I think in this game, Russell Wilson's passing, especially the deep shots, seemed to really open up the running game instead of like traditionally we've sort of, I think in the past couple of years tried to set up the pass with the run, but this was nice to see like the deep shots making them back off, and then suddenly, you got a lot of space for Najee Harris to run through, or Jalen Warren to catch passes and pivot, and he had a couple crucial conversions there, but it was really fun. This is like I don't back-to-back weeks where Harris has had over 100 yards. Not frequent for as many yards as he's had in his career. Not frequent that he has done that in back-to-back weeks, and I think his yards per carry has been really nice in both of those weeks. So this is looking nice, right? I mean, if we can keep the offense like this, keep people worried about the deep shots, even if we're not hitting on them as much. The running game should thrive more, and then play action should thrive more. So I don't know. I think the offense is in a fairly nice spot right now. Again, I'm like, I'm not entirely convinced after one game of Wilson that it was the right decision, but I think I'm like you. I'm fairly on board at this point. We'll see how it goes next week. We get the Giants, which I think actually their pass defense has been not bad this year.
Yeah, they're like a sneaky decent defense.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what the offense looks like next week. But if we can pull out a win there, we came out of the first 8 weeks of the season into the bye week after that, in as good a shape as you could have imagined us coming out of it with. But yeah, we'll see. What else to say about this one?
I would just say, I think the other thing I thought about this game was I thought that it was a resilient win. Like it was, because there was a little bit in the middle where it seemed like the game could have gotten away,
Yeah.
And I feel like the team kind of held it together, and I don't recall exactly what the score got to, but it was I guess 15 to 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and the Jets were driving in the 2 minute. Yeah.
And that was the first Beanie Bishop interception then that kind of swung thing. So before that play, you easily could have seen this game kind of unraveling, and I thought the team really steadied the ship and then just dominated the second half. Yeah,
it really was one of those, that sequence there, the Bishop pick, one-handed pick in the middle of the field, which was awesome. And then we scored on the back end of that before half. Wilson on a fade to Pickens. That was a humongous sequence for us in that game. I think that, and it was like these games where you suddenly have a new starting quarterback who's been working in the offense all off season, and I mean these are really interesting in more respects than usual, right? Because there's so much that you're learning about the team, as at least that it feels like you're learning about the team in the moment, right? Like how good are we? What can our offense be with this person at quarterback? So the extra epistemic wrinkles that are going on here make it sort of extra interesting as well, right? in the way that like if you've had the same quarterback for 17 years or 18 years, like we did with Ben Roethlisberger, there's like less surprise at that point. So this season's been interesting in a couple of ways, and that I think this was one of those games where, you know, what helps it be interesting, of course, is also that you end up playing well and scoring 37 points. But
Yeah.
it would still have been, you know, interesting for less time, I guess, if we it was just a complete dud. But anyway, yeah, I think that turnaround there at the end of the first half was really crucial, and it was nice to see us sort of not lose confidence based on how it had gone to that point, and be able to turn it around. It was, you know, yeah, it's exciting.
And apparently, this is the third time so far this season that the Steelers have been losing at halftime and won the game already. You know, this was Bill Simmons and Cousin Sal always, they call it the Cousin Sal bet. He actually bets on it. He bet on it this week that, Jets first half Steelers game. And apparently he gets like 8-1 odds on it. So it just has to hit like more than 2 times in the season and you make money. And it's already hit 3 times this year.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that's probably a good bet given the way we've played over the last couple of years. We somehow pull things out at the end. But this one we didn't really need to even wait till the end. It was a dominant second half. A lot like again in that Chargers game earlier this year. I thought that was a game where I left feeling like, wow, like we might have something here, and I kind of feel similarly after this one. Pending, we did get lucky on some big crucial plays here, and I don't know how good the Jets really are. They had a lot of injuries in their secondary, so we'll see what the offense looks like next week. But this was a promising first game with Wilson, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I guess we can make some quick predictions before our next break for how next week will go.
Yeah. You want to do Chiefs Raiders first?
Sure.
It's in Las Vegas, right?
Yeah, it's in Las Vegas. Mahomes never lost in that stadium, including the Super Bowl this past year. So, I don't know. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, how could this not be a blowout? That's the main question I have. And I guess the Raiders, like they often show up for the Chiefs, or at least they have sometimes shown up recently for the Chiefs. But I feel like it's going to be in this vicinity of 30 to 10 or something like that. I mean, I don't expect it to be close. You should have a fun time, I think.
I hope you're right. I'm going to have a similar score, I think. I think I'm going to go 35-17. I think if there is a 5-touchdown game this year, this may be it for Mahomes. Except for the receiver health situation. But if you look at opponent motivation, the Raiders talked a lot of crap after they beat us last year. So Mahomes does well in the division on the road. So I think this may be a comprehensive win. I hope so, at least.
Yeah. By the way, you were very close last week with your prediction on the Chiefs game too. We should mention that.
And what did I said 20, 29, 17?
17, and it was 28-18.
Yeah, it was 28-18. It was a weird score, but I guess the Chiefs didn't have a weird score. But all right, then what about Steelers-Giants? Is this in New York or in Pittsburgh?
It's in Pittsburgh. It's a Monday night game. The kind of game that you would expect us to win. We've been good at home on Monday night with Mike Tomlin. I guess there's still this wrinkle of who is Russell Wilson at this point, and is he going to be as good against a much better or much healthier pass defense than the Jets had? It's also the kind of game where I can see it. I'm confident right now at this point in the week, and then I can imagine getting to Monday night about an hour before the game and suddenly feeling like we are screwed. Right? Historically, I feel like this is the kind of game that we would lose just when things are setting up, and you can see how we would position ourselves to be in a great, make a great run this year. we would lose a game like this that was supposed to be a cakewalk. So I don't know. I might think this is. I might predict this to be fairly close. Maybe something like 20, 24-17. I feel like I use that score range a lot, but I feel it does feel. I mean, I think we're going to be struggling when it you know when it comes down to it. But yeah, I think 24-17 is what I'll go with. Knowing that around game time, I'm not going to be at all confident that I'm going to expect us to lose, probably. But yeah, I'm curious what a more objective, less emotionally laden take might be on this. So if you have one.
I actually had a fairly similar score in mind. I was thinking 24-14. I think it's going to be. The only doubt I have about that score is I don't feel like there are enough Steelers field goals. But besides that, 24-14. And to me, I have the feeling that like the Giants will get a touchdown in the first quarter and then probably another one in the fourth quarter. And I don't think they'll really do much in between. And the Steelers will just kind of slowly rack up points through the game.
Yeah, they probably will score in the first quarter, right? It seems like teams often score on their first one or two drives against us, and then our defense, I don't know, adjusts or something. But yeah, I mean, I would be happy with 24-14, certainly. I mean, happy with any kind of win, but I almost think now that I've just processed it a bit more that it could be even closer, like something like 21-20 or something. But we'll see. I officially picked 24-17. So
I'd be surprised if Daniel Jones can get to 20 against your defense. That would surprise me.
I would be too, but it's the kind of game where it's like they've got nothing to lose. They might try a flea flicker or something strange, and we might not be ready for it. Although, I don't know. Our defense has been actually a lot of our team. Honestly, has they've been together for the amount of time now where you sort of expect they've come up together and they I feel like they gel at a certain point, and maybe the defense has enough veterans to help the young players be aware of trick plays and that kind of thing. So I don't know. It could be less of a nail biter than I'm thinking, but if it holds true to Steelers form, it will be.
I will predict a TJ Watt interception in this game. I feel like it's going to be like a screen pass, or he's going to try to throw one over the middle, and Watt's just going to jump up and pick it off. Like that's the kind of game I'm expecting. Like Daniel Jones will throw one to TJ Watt.
It does feel like Watt should have an impact on this game. He's been a little quiet for a week or two now, but that's because he's been, I think, getting so much attention. We'll see.
So maybe they'll try to block him with a practice squad wide receiver.
Yeah, that would be great. Won't be the first or second time this year. How about around the league this past week? Any games that stand out as ones we should talk about?
Well, I think the two kind of marquee early games, which were available in my market. I spent this weekend in St. Louis, so I got the St. Louis games, which I wonder if that would have been different in New York this week. But I got Texans-Packers on CBS and Lions-Vikings on Fox, and they both were good games in very different ways. I think starting with Texans-Packers, I think this game is one that the scoreline is very deceptive if one didn't watch the game or really kind of dig into the box score, because it looks like a game of two good quarterbacks that kind of went really tightly, but CJ Stroud was not much of an influence on this game, actually. This was like Jordan Love versus Jordan Love. When Jordan Love was coming down and scoring, the Packers were doing well. When he was throwing interceptions or the Packers were turning it over, then the Texans were getting back into it. But it was very much CJ Stroud just could not do anything when he wasn't given a short field. The Texans scoring drives were, let's see, I can't see my own computer screen because I'm old. I think that's a 6. I think that's a 4-play 6-yard drive was the first one that ended up in a field goal. The next one was a 2-play 11-yard drive. And the other one was 9 plays, 22 yards. And then, they finally had a 55-yard scoring drive. But the Texans could not move the ball if they weren't given a short field. So when the Packers weren't turning it over, the Texans just couldn't do a thing. It's just that the Packers turned it over enough to make it possible that the Texans got close to winning this game. They ended up putting together a very rough 13-play, 49-yard drive. Or that might be a 5. I'm old. I can't read my computer at this distance.
I know. What is it? I have to make Word documents really big now when I try to read that. I hate this.
I guess I should be less old and use the Command Plus function and zoom in on my screen. I could do that. 13-play, 45-yard drive to take the lead, and the Jordan Love got the ball with 40. Yeah, it was a slog. Yeah, it was a slog. And they took a 22-21 lead, and then Jordan Love drove down in the last minute 44, and they kicked a 45-yard field goal to win. But this was not a good game for the C.J. Stroud fans. He really, really struggled with the Packers' defense, and the Texans were just inept offensively all day. It was just when their defense was creating chances. Wow, C.J. Stroud ended the game 10 for 21 for 86 yards. He was sacked 4 times, and his QBR was 22.1.
That's rough. I guess this is I don't know. Hard to make a judgment based on one game, but I feel like Stroud has not been lighting it up the way he was last year. And this is the kind of reason that, I think we were both, pumping the brakes a little bit on him in our season predictions, thinking he was amazing. Let's see how it goes, right? Because a lot of times you have these kind of flash in the pan performances. Not to say that that's what it was, but yeah, not quite as good so far.
Well, it's about the adjustment to the adjustment, because the league's going to adjust, and then what do you do to adjust to that? And that's where we are with him. We're got to see what he's going to do. But it was interesting because it was the battle of the 2 quarterbacks that kind of broke out last year, and Love had his down moments too, but he fared a lot better than Stroud in this one. Yeah,
what's your read? He's been throwing a fair number of picks, Love has, but again, touchdown interception ratio isn't everything. So I don't know what did you see any of the picks? Or were they concerning, or are they more like the bad luck ones?
No, he definitely is a little laissez-faire about firing the ball in there. He's actually kind of Brett Favre,
Yeah.
He rips him in there, and sometimes it's awesome. One of his touchdowns, he just it was a missile, and the safety saw the route. So it's tight end is coming in. The safety saw it, and Love just fired it in so hard that the safety couldn't get there. He just... I
saw that one. Yeah.
It reminds me so much of Brett Favre, especially because it's in a Packers uniform. But he just he's I'm doing this. He just throws it in there.
Yeah. I don't know. I couldn't play that way, but it's kudos to the guys that can. Right? I feel even in Madden, my stomach drops when I throw it. And I think, that's a bad pass, right? That's going to get picked or something, right? So I try to avoid that feeling, but I guess some players don't have that feeling. I'm going to gun it as hard as I can and see what happens.
Yeah.
Works out.
And the Lions-Vikings game was it was a multiple narrative game. I thought I had my narrative in the third quarter that I was kind of, okay, I've decided what the story of this game was, and then it kind of took a turn. Early on, the Vikings really dominated this game as the Lions seemed to struggle a ton with Brian Flores' scheme. And then it seemed like it was going to be one of those games that was okay, this is talent winning out over scheme. That the Lions adjusted, they kind of figured out what was going on. They took control of the second quarter. They took a 10-0 first quarter deficit and turned it into a 21-0 halftime lead. But then the Vikings hung around. That really surprised me to the point where, the third quarter they kind of traded blows. So again, it was 28-17 going into the fourth. And then the Vikings actually scored 12 unanswered points and took the lead. And the Lions had to come down and win it on a field goal at the end. So Initially I was thinking like, I'm a Jared Goff skeptic. So when the Lions were struggling early on, I was like, well, when the defense is exotic and it's really tough, Goff can't do it. And then to the second and third quarters, I was like, okay, well, the Lions took a punch in the mouth and they, it shows that scheme can only go so far and the talented team that's got their heads together can get it done. But I got to give the Vikings some credit. These are two teams that I'm not like super high on, and they both really played admirably in this game and did a great job of handling punches and coming back. And they ended up playing a pretty high quality game in the end.
Yeah, it looked like that's one that I should watch the highlights on because it looks like it was a fun game. And Jared Goff has been playing. At least the numbers are really impressive. I mean, is he good? I mean, is he better than we thought? I guess that's the question. Or is it still like scheme quarterback kind of?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I can. I just don't know that I trust him to beat a good team in tough situations when the chips are down. Like, I should say that part of the Vikings, part of their comeback, was the Lions struggling to move the ball, but also they had a fumble return for a touchdown that ended up giving the lead ultimately. So they had gotten it back to 28-23, and then the Lions were trying to run like a 4-minute offense, run out the game, and they forced a David Montgomery fumble. So a little bit fluky, but also, they're a tough defense. So, we can give that to them. But going back to Goff, he clearly can play well when he knows what he's looking at. But I just think of Goff as like a slightly higher level, like Alex Smith. Like, I love Alex Smith. He's a good quarterback. The difference is the turnover part. Alex Smith didn't turn the ball over ever like Goff can. But I think the difference is like when the offense isn't winning, and the offense is going to win a lot. He's got a lot of good receivers. It's kind of like the Brock Purdy situation. When you've got everything great around you, like a lot's going to go well, and that might not be good enough. But the very best, the Ravens defense, the Chiefs defense, these teams are going to make it such that you're not going to have easy answers, and that's where I don't trust Goff. And
you're going to
have to be fair,
up with something on the fly.
Yeah,
right?
You got to do something that's not obvious, that's not dictated by your, the rules of the play are dictated by the route combination. And he, one could argue the Vikings are one of those defenses. So in that case, he passed the test, but that's where I'll have to see if he can do that consistently. And he's just not a quarterback that scares me. And, Brock Purdy's not a quarterback that scares me. And he almost beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. So you never know. It can happen.
Yeah. But again, it can be just a function of all the weapons around you and the scheme being designed perfectly for those weapons. But yeah, I mean, so I get what you're saying, right? It's the kind of quarterback still, at least in your mind, that is not going to make surprisingly awesome plays out of structure, right? It'll be within the scheme, do what you're supposed to do here. And if the defense knows how to foil that, then you're out of luck, right?
Yeah.
So that is still my picture of Goff too, but these numbers the past couple of weeks have been really impressive. So.
Yeah, I mean, I got to hand it to him. I can simultaneously have my views about Goff and think that he's exceeded my expectations this year, which he certainly has. But
yeah.
I don't know that makes me think he's like, and he might make the Super Bowl. I don't know that I trust an NFC team more than the Lions right now. It's I'm the idiot that picked the Cowboys to make the Super Bowl,
Me
and
too,
that's
actually.
not looking so good. I thought you picked the Packers.
Oh, did I? I don't remember what. Yeah,
the Packers
One of the
pick's
two.
looking that looks good, but I had the Packers losing to the Cowboys in the NFC Championship game in that. I also had the Jets in the NFC title game, so maybe predictions were not my thing this year. And I had the Vikings under 7.5 wins as a lock. So.
Well, this week was at least a little bit helpful for that.
Yeah, that's one positive step.
That's what makes it fun, right? Things go the way you don't typically expect them to. So. I should say, I mean, I don't have a ton of thoughts about a lot of the games this week, but the Ravens-Bucks, I got a chance to watch some of on a plane, and I saw the early going there, and the Bucks were looking good, and then the Ravens just decided to start playing, I guess, and essentially went, you know. I mean, I guess it got a little bit close in the end, but the Ravens were not. I don't think they were scared. Um, Lamar Jackson looked awesome from what I saw from him, and the numbers reflect that. 17 of 22 for 281 and 5 touchdowns. Like, whew, there's a 5 touchdown game casually from Lamar. I mean, I don't know. They're scary, right? I'm not looking forward to playing them. I never look forward to playing them, but this year especially, they're going to be tough.
Yeah, they'll be tough. And this was an odd game in that I think the score actually ends up being about right. Like, it was, the Ravens were playing really well, and the Bucks were having a couple bad breaks. And so I feel like the game was never in doubt, but so I think a lot of people would say like the 41-31, it seems closer than the game actually was, which it did for this individual game. But I feel like things kind of evened out score-wise. If I do think that the Ravens got a lot of breaks, and I think they were better in this game and deserved to win by multiple possessions, but I also don't think they were, whatever, it was like 34-10 or something. I don't think they were playing that much better than the Bucks, It was, so I think 41-31 ended up being like an appropriate score for that game, I feel like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always tough cheering for Baker Mayfield, but he did look good early in this game, and then there was an end zone pick where it was like he just sat there for a while and fired it into Ravens player. I was like, "What are you doing?" Wait, no, not there. But yeah, I don't know.
The Mayfield, anyway. This would be a good one to. Who do you feel like has like the worst looking picks right now? Well, Will Levis. Will Levis is off the table.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that Mayfield pick was bad. The one in the end zone.
Like for me in my life, when I think, and I'm trying to think of like quarterbacks that are like going to maintain their starting quarterback status, like not like Nathan Peterman or something that like threw some. For me, I think for my life, it's probably Eli Manning. Like, that guy could just throw some of the worst picks. Like, you'd just be like, why? But I feel like Mayfield is up there for current players. Like, every once in a while, he'll throw in, and you're just like, what? Why?
Yeah. Yeah, if we're opening up to non-current players, then Eli Manning did have some we're like, wait, you won Super Bowls. What are you like? What are you doing?
Yeah. Or Phillip Rivers.
Roethlisberger did too. I mean, I remember. I mean, maybe that just is like I watched him so carefully, but he had a couple where it's just like, "Are you okay? Like, what is going on?" Yeah, Phillip Rivers had some good ones too. I don't know.
Yeah, Phillip Rivers. And
Brett Favre is a great one.
Yeah, I was about to say Jordan Love might be contending for the title if he keeps going like he is. Yeah. Favre. I still remember the Favre. What was that? 2009, the year the Saints won the Super Bowl in the NFC title game. I think the Vikings had the ball in overtime, and Favre just like, it's one of the saddest things to hear the Vikings announcers call that play. They're just like, oh no, like what? Like what are you doing? Why? He just like throws it across his body right to Tracy Porter. It's
in
like,
the middle of the field. Yeah, like the kind of throw. I mean. It's the kind of that you're always taught not to make, right? Everyone is like, don't throw it late over the middle across your body. Well, that's what he did. But
at like 40 years old too. It's not like prime. I mean, his arm is still pretty good, but still.
Yeah. That's one of the all-time like head scratcher picks, I think. But good. Yeah, I don't. Any other games this week that are worth commenting on? I mean, obviously, a lot happened. But
we did not to. I just think it's unfortunate. The Browns situation is just unfortunate all around.
Yeah,
and a lot of people were wondering why Deshaun Watson was starting, and I don't want anybody to get injured, and it's unfortunate that like the reason why he's not starting anymore is that he got hurt, but. It was becoming kind of hard to understand what was going on behind him continuing to play as he was playing as badly as he was. Um, but and then beyond that, then they had like Dorian Thompson Robinson as the backup instead of Jameis Winston. That was very confusing to
Yeah,
me.
I don't know what that's about.
But
But do we know what they're going to do going forward? I mean, you would got to think that they'd go with Jameis Winston.
I would hope so. But I think there was some talk that Dorian Thompson Robinson got hurt too. So I think Jameis Winston
Okay.
is starting. But did Dorian Thompson Robinson get hurt? Well, I don't see anything of it. But in any case, Jameis Winston's going to play, which a lot of people were calling for before, and now it's happening in unfortunate circumstances. And on that note, I don't know why, but personally, that has always been the injury. Like when you think of like injuries that are feasible that you could have in your life, like I'm not anticipating losing a limb. I guess it's possible, but I feel like of the more probable injuries one could have, for some reason, the one I've always been most afraid of is the Achilles tear. There's just
Really?
something about it that like the tendon's like right there. You can feel it. It's like so exposed, and like it happens to people like me in your 30s when you haven't done very many athletic things, and then you try to use, like I don't know why that's always been the injury I've been most afraid of getting, the
Uh,
Achilles tear.
for me, that's the collarbone. I can just see that breaking there, and I can imagine it breaking in a very disgusting way where it like pops out of the skin or something. But
Oh,
but like I can
interesting.
I, I can feel that right there too. So that's, but yeah, the Achilles is right. That's up there with the ones that I definitely fear happening.
And so just a very worrisome. I don't know. And so you see something like you could see Watson's like pop so clearly, and it's like, oh man,
Yeah,
I don't wish that on anybody.
yeah, yep. That's true. Um, well, let's see. I'm trying to think if there's any other games that are worth commenting on here.
I I don't know what to make of like the Broncos beating the Saints that were
Yeah,
undermanned, and you know I don't know what to make of that. It was. I will say Bo Nix threw one of the weirdest interceptions I have ever seen. He had like a guy on like a post and a guy on like an over route, and both of these guys are wide open. And there's a defender between them, and he throws it right to the defender. Like, I've never seen it. I've never seen that before. Like I think Michaels and Herbstreit were marveling at the underneath guy being so wide open and being overthrown, but then you look beyond and the deep guy's wide open too, and it's just like, how's that even possible? I don't know. That was crazy.
like even just pure luck, you got a 2 out of 3 chance of hitting one of your
Yeah,
guys on that play, and you hit the other guy. Yeah, that's good. Um,
it's almost like he
I don't
saw
know.
one person that was wearing a jersey separate that was different from the two people, and assumed that like that's the person to throw to.
Yeah, he's he's not he's not looking great so far this year. I mean, not the way we expected him to, but they did 33 points. That's a good output.
Yeah, I mean the Saints just couldn't do anything in that game, and I think that was part of it. That
Mm.
you get enough cracks at it, you're eventually gonna get some points on the board. But yeah, I mean I've never been a Bo Nix believer, and who knows? Like maybe for his sake he'll be good. Like, but it's hard to see. Spencer Rattler was worse. It was a game that I was really excited to sit down and watch Thursday Night Football, and I turned it off. Actually, that's the night I started playing a game of Madden because I was like,
So this is
I
stupid.
don't know, I
Yeah,
want to watch this.
yeah.
So yeah, and the NLCS game, the baseball game, was already fairly out of hand. So I was like, I'll play some Madden.
Yeah. Good. Well, okay. So we've done our predictions. We've talked around the league a bit. Do you want to end with some anecdotes and uh, not leaving anything out of mind? That's what we would do now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Uh, do you want to go first?
Yeah. Sure. When we were talking about Madden earlier, I started to think back to some uh, wonderful or terrible Madden experiences. And the one that stood out to me, and like I don't know how interesting this will actually end up being. It's just like reliving it for me is going to be fun. But objectively, it's just going to be like this guy's talking about a Madden season he had one time when he was like 15. Like, why should I care? But anyway, I played through. Like I always debated, like, should I play the season on like All Pro or All Madden? And I did play at least one season on All Madden, playing of course as the Steelers. And I don't know what this was. Maybe I was playing as Cordell Stewart for some reason, so I don't know why, but I was in the Super Bowl, and you know how hard it was to kick in that, like when on All Madden, you had that like meter that just like went so fast. So at one point in that game, I missed an extra point until I had like an odd score. I had like 27 or something at the end, and I was in a prevent defense because I was up by 6 on the last play of the game, and they hit a bomb when my quarterback like ran out of bounds or something like that. And, like I didn't control the quarterback, but like the computer controlling the quarterback ran out of bounds. So they got a bomb touchdown on the last play of the game, and then they made the extra point. I lost by 1 because it was stupid. So that was a fun one. That was like my season ended on like the most annoying way possible. But I'm sure if I keep thinking about it, I'll come up with more like memorable, at least memorable for me, Madden experiences. But I remember another kind of experience that happened a lot was when I would scramble with Cordell Stewart and then try to slide. I would end up diving all the time. Because like if you were pressing on the joystick at the same time as you tried to slide, then you would dive instead of just doing natural. So like I would end up diving, and when you dive, like the hands go forward and the ball's right there, and it's like almost if there's a player in the vicinity it's gonna be a fumble, right? And so many times I would just be like, oh crap, I knew not to dive, and I would end up fumbling it away. But there are those just like uh, uh, quirks of the game. That's what I was looking for, where you know not to do that, but like in the moment it's too tense and you can't get your hand off the joystick before you press the slide button. Of course, you're gonna fumble at that point. Yeah, too many of those.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the most. I've had some intensely good and intensely bad Madden. Like I remember winning a Super Bowl on like a 70-yard touchdown pass against the Cowboys in Madden. I remember it was one of those games where like I feel like this would happen to me a lot in Madden, where I would just be like really in control the whole game. And somehow you have like 2 bad drives and do something dumb, and suddenly the other team's winning. And then you're like, all that equity that I put in, like I was dominating this game and it means nothing. And then I thought it was going to go into overtime. And then like I just ran like 4 verticals with like 20 seconds to go. And I hit the slot guy and went like 70 yards for a touchdown and won the game. And like it's so funny how like the animation of the game like doesn't take, like there's no account for like closeness.
Yeah, it's just running normally.
So they're running, and then like the announcers are like, and they win the Super Bowl. And it's just like like that would be like the craziest thing that ever happened in a Super Bowl. Like win on a bomb in the last play. Like,
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. I do remember that there was some, and every once in a while, that was the other thing that was interesting about Madden in that age, at that time range, is it seemed like every once in a while there would just be a game where the CPU was like, you're not effing winning this game. Like, and it would be like, no matter what you do. Like, I remember like, and this was true, I used to play the college football game too. I remember playing in a bowl with Mizzou, and it was like Brad Smith was the quarterback back then. And I remember throwing like 6 picks against Tennessee in a bowl game, and somehow like I won the game like 18-14 or something stupid. But I just like could not stop throwing interceptions. Like,
this was the kind of thing like back when I played Madden, I really cared about touchdown to interception ratio.
Yeah.
And so like I would throw a pick and I'm like, oh crap, now I got to throw a touchdown or 2 to outweigh that, and then I would come back and like force something and throw another pick, and so I would get on these streaks where it's like 4 straight drives ended in picks or something. Like, and then I'm sitting there with like 1 touchdown and 4 picks, feeling terrible about myself. But, yeah, this is the kind of thing that I would do a lot.
Or how many times did you have the situation where it's like, okay, I'm like up by 6, like I just got to close this game out. They're like 3 minutes to go in the game, and like the first or second play of the drive, you just throw a pick 6, and then you're just like, all right, well now I gotta come down and go win this game.
There's not really a reason even be throwing it at that point, but you're like, I can pad my stats here a bit. And, no, you're not going to pad. You're going to throw a pick. Yeah.
And like how quickly you have to try to get the mentality like, nope, this is fine. I'm just going to do what I was supposed to do last time and I'm going to come down and score and it's okay.
Yeah. But that's the kind of play where you're extra tense, and so you're probably going to bullet a pass that should be a lob or something like that. I don't know how many times I did that. But I always did feel like the corners in that game had, at least at that time, maybe it's less true nowadays, but they had exceptional sort of, I don't know what you would call it, circles of, where they could reach basically anything that got in that circle, right? So you really did have to lob it in a way that, probably in real life you don't have to worry that much about the corners picking off low trajectory passes. But.
Well, also the whole like real life thing. One of the things I've learned a lot watching film is that like quarterbacks will throw to a tightly covered player if the defender isn't looking, and that doesn't matter in Madden. The corner just knows it's coming regardless. It like doesn't matter at all.
All right. Well, I got to run. Actually, I've got a trivia match that I need to play in a minute here. Good. Well, hopefully we'll have some more fun wins to talk about next week. Although we'll see. We have not very fun loss to talk about if we do lose, but.
For both
of us, yeah. Good. Well, thanks for everyone that's following along and keeping up with the channel and all the videos and whatnot. So, stay engaged. It's fun. It's fun for all of us.
All right. Until next time.